Hi, y'all. Richard Nelson here with the Commonwealth Policy Center, and we are in literally the last days of the Kentucky 2026 legislative session. I'm here with State Senator Aaron Reed from Shelby County, and wanted to share some good news and then a brief update from Senator Reed. Earlier this week, the state Senate passed Senate Resolution 148. It designates June as Fidelity Month, and essentially this is where we celebrate faith in God, family, and freedom and patriotism. And Senator Reed was the sponsor, and I want to thank you personally for sponsoring this and leading the charge, so to speak.
You're welcome. It was awesome. It was awesome to be able to, an honor to be able to do that, for sure. And my whole, even when I was campaigning, running for Senate, faith, family, and freedom were my three pillars. And, I said that every time I went out. So it was awesome to be able to put forth a Senate resolution that does just that.
Yeah. And, this is something, if I could add to that, we take for granted that our rights come from God, right? That faith is something that we have in common as Americans, that we acknowledge God is the giver of our rights. And then family is the cornerstone of society. Right. Marriage between a man and a woman.
Yes.
The importance of marriage to children. And then patriotism and freedom, which is something, according to this, is acknowledged that patriotism is at a very low mark in our nation's history. And I think this probably means maybe more to you and others who served. You served as a Navy SEAL, served our country. I appreciate that, by the way, on a personal level. But it's important that we realize what we have here in this country, our freedoms, and that it comes with a price, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely does.
So, Aaron, thank you for leading the charge on Senate Resolution 148. We'll give a brief, we're going to pivot and then move over to another issue that you worked on. A few weeks ago, maybe last month, I heard a story on the Kentucky Center for Investigative Reporting about Shelby County, your home county, where there were a couple of women who came forth with their stories about being groomed while they were young adults, while they were in high school, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds,
right,
who were groomed by a teacher, I believe in one case, a coach in another. There was one that had apparently an inappropriate relationship with the principal. And you sponsored a bill that would address that. Tell us briefly what that was and what it would have done.
Yeah, my Senate Bill 196, what it did was it added a 2-year buffer so that a teacher or coach or anyone who worked for the school couldn't date a student for 2 years after they graduated high school. We also had in there if they were less than 4 years apart, then there would be no red flags. But if they were, then the superintendent would need to take notice, and the EPSB board would have to basically investigate. And if the teacher was found to be guilty of that, then they would lose their license. We got to do something to protect our kids.
Yeah.
We're hearing more and more stories about grooming incidents that are taking place, and it's mind-blowing, honestly. Because all these girls are starting to come out, in a large number, much larger than we thought.
Yeah. So that bill did make it this session, but if I understood correctly, you plan to propose it next legislative session?
Yes, sir. House Bill 4 from the House came out. It was a new bill to identify and define what grooming is, and they put a Class A misdemeanor on top of that. And as I told the ladies that were here kind of lobbying for grooming bills, that we would, in the interim, work on one to better enhance House Bill 4, as well as put in those safeguards. And, what superintendents want from us is clear, defined rules. They don't want this gray area. So we can get rid of the gray and make it to where they can actually, when they see someone doing wrong, there's a defined line instead of this gray area. And that's what they want from us, and that's what we're going to give them.
And that's a good pivot to another bill. The last bill we're going to talk about is something that you called the trash bill. I don't know if that was in the language at all, but tell us about this.
There's this bill been going around, James Allen Tipton, Representative Tipton has been pushing for several years now. It's passed the trash bill. So for years in our education system, if an educator has been accused of any kind of sexual wrongdoing of any kind, if they resign, then the investigation stops, and that they can move on to another district. And normally they're signing non-disclosure agreements because they usually have some type of a deal. Well, House Bill 253, in it prevents non-disclosure agreements, and even if that educator leaves the district, the investigation continues. So they find out and get to the bottom of it, instead of in the past, the investigation just went away because that issue went away with the teacher leaving that district. But the district that was receiving that educator is now harboring a potential big issue.
Yeah, and this is apparently, from what I understand, not isolated, not just once or twice across the state, but apparently this is a common practice.
It has been
and it's related to the grooming issue, which
That's
is
right.
sexual impropriety, and these teachers move on, or these principals move on to another district. So this bill would say no non-disclosure agreements, and the investigation would have to continue after they leave.
I'll tell you, Richard, it's shocking what I've learned in the 15 months I've been here is that educators, we love our teachers, but they are also the most protected work class in America. Try getting rid of a bad actor. There's so many layers and safeguards that they have. I mean, it's good in most parts, but sometimes when you have a bad actor, you really need to be able to trim that away, and it's really hard.
I think most of the teachers would agree that that should happen too.
I would say so.
The status of this bill is what? This did not pass this year?
Well, my bill 196 with a 2-year buffer did not get any traction yet, because we're going to continue working on it through the interim. But House Bill 4 passed. It'll go into law.
That's right.
And
So that's the grooming bill.
That's the grooming bill, yes. And then 253, which has that pass the trash language in it, also passed. And it has an emergency clause on it. So that means it'll go into effect probably, once it, I don't know if the governor will sign it or not. He has 10 days to sign it as of, I think, Wednesday. So we'll know 10 days after, this past Wednesday, if he's going to sign it. And after that, with the emergency clause, it should go into effect pretty quick.
Very good.
Yeah.
Aaron Reed,
Yeah.
appreciate your good work.
Yeah.
Keep it up.
Godspeed.
Thank you.